So that is what we see in the last part of our study discussion on how we can import module. We have also seen how we can, So let's look at what we call local and global scope. So what does this mean? When you create a variable for a function, it can be every variable inside the function has a local scope. That is, it cannot be used outside its scope. So let's look at what this means. Parameters and variables that are assigned in a call function are said to exist in a function local scope. And variables that are assigned outside are said to be in a global scope. So here I have a function called hen, right? This function is called hen. And now we say def, the name of the function, and now I assign eggs in this value, right? So you see here when I call this, when I call the function like this, when I run this one, okay, when we run this one, what will happen? Sammy, when we run this one, what will happen?
That will be, what do you call it, 31337.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it will give us an error.
Why?
Okay, so the bar parameter, nothing is passed. Yeah, na gane ko. Bypassing any parameter. So amma ai ciki kuma an riga an samu something. Anyway, just run it, let's see.
So what is the problem?
The error happens because the x variable exists only in local scope, okay? So scope in a variable code.
Now?
Naturally, you shouldn't call a variable then is a local variable.
Let me run this. So what this means is that here you can see what I want to show here is that you can see this variable. Okay, this variable and this function called hen has variable called x that is defined inside it, right? This number is assigned to egg, and now I say return egg. So what this means that here now I come and say print x. You can see this egg is not accessible outside this function. This egg is only accessible inside the function. But when I kungachiwa is outside the function we don't have any value called egg. So that is why when we run this one, it will return an error. So what this is telling is that a variable, if we define a variable and assign it a value, its lifespan is only inside this function. When the function is run, its value is destroyed. So when you call a function print here with x, there is no value x. So in a nutshell, anything that you declare or you assign value inside a function is not accessible outside the function. I don't know who Pungana will make anything. Simon. Ajiya, kun gane abin da kun nake yi?
To doctor, amma sai nake ga kaman, are we accessing it outside the function now?
Yes. If you look at it,
I thought it's within the function.
I am accessing only egg by hen nake by function din nake accessing by.
Oh yeah, that's what I want to say. It's like we didn't relate the hen with the egg. Okay.
By function din nake ba. Maybe ina da variable na variable egg. So now maybe yanzu ina son ne wani abu the variable egg. So variable egg is not available outside the function.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not have access to it.
Yes. So it's only available inside the function. So that is what we mean. Local variable cannot be used in global scope.
Yes.
So, but what about now you can see local variable. So here, anything that is not within, so look at it. anything here is within the function is called local. Daga nan zuwa nan komai da muke define is local. Amma idan ba function bane kuma komai outside the function is called global scope.
Global.
Is global scope. So for a value to idan kin ga yanzu na rufe function to duk abin da yake cikin function din nan kuma me is not available outside here a nan wajen da nan wajen. So that is why here the neuron in the one I know the variable na kira egg nan is giving me error. But when I have make, for example, egg equals to x equals to this, right? And maybe even the value ma'ana. So now kuma sai na ce min return x. So now na ce the function din nan ya min returning egg function here. So do you think value the egg, which is outside the function, is it accessible inside the function?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Because it has been declared
Yes.
as a
It is
global.
global.
Yes. So anything that is global is accessible inside a function. So
Yes.
let me run this hen. Maybe I just call the function called hen and now run it. Can you see, because I say return x, so it means
Yes.
return x. This x is accessible because it is outside, it's accessible.
Yes.
So that is what we mean by that. Local scope cannot use variable in other local scope. So again, local scope, misali yanzu variable anan, kin ga wannan egg is only scope din shi a cikin spam function yake. Ba za a iya amfani da shi ba a cikin wannan abin nan din, wannan function din. So kowanne local scope cannot use variable in other local scope. Kun ga abin da ke nufi? Kowane scope in dai local ne to variable din sa ba shi da alaka da kowane. So kin ga yanzu na ce x is equal to 99, nan na ce egg equals to 0. It means kowace egg nan egg equals to 0 is different from the egg in here.
99, yes.
Yeah. So this means that yeah. So when I call spam, can you see it? I say print x, but you have an egg now at 99. So also when I say span bacon, I call this function. This one will also give me the variable okay, I didn't return egg here. Remember, if you don't return it, you will not see anything. Okay, this is a print. I printed. Right. So when I call bacon, which is a function here, this
return 0.
So what this is telling is that local scope cannot use variable in other local scope. So kowane in kai define din variable anan ba za ka iya using din shi ba anan wajen. Sai dai idan global ne kana da egg here equals to 3 equals to whatsoever 4, so you can access it da cikin nan kowane za ka iya accessing din shi. Yeah. Another thing is global variable can be read from a local scope, which I already explained, right? Global variable can be read from local scope. If something is global, so you can see here, I said x equals to 42, right? X equals to 42. And now I have a function called spam, right? And I call egg. So this one, you can see, we can actually I call the functions. Can you see it? So it means you can accept, yeah. Lastly, local and global variable with the same name. So what will happen if now I have a local variable and global variable, they have the same name? Look at it. Can you see I have egg equals to value? And now can you see now here I have another egg. So this means that inside the global variable, I have a variable, inside the local, they have the same name. So which value can be used now? What could happen?
It's going to be the egg value, egg equal value. Egg equal value.
So no, the local variable, local
was a declaration
function, local function will use its own local,
declaration.
Yes. So for example, now when I call here spam, so I call the function. Okay, let me say it.
Yeah, it is.
Let me say it called return, return x. Okay, there's something that I want to show. First. So this one. So let's assume here. You can see here in the global, I have a variable called what x, right?
X.
But inside here, do I declare a variable x inside the function?
No.
No, I didn't declare it. But I call the variable x, even though I didn't declare it, right?
Yes.
When you declare, when you have a variable, so when you run it, Python will check inside this local scope and try to find, is there any egg? If there is no egg, then it will go outside the scope and use the value.
Yes, a global, yes.
Global. When I run this one, what do you expect it to return now?
It will give us an X value.
Yeah, so it will return this. Can you see value? So it means that if there is no value, you call a function, you call a variable inside your function. If there is no value assigned to it in the local, then it will go. But what about if here I say x equals to local? Can you see? So when I run this one, what do you think this will give
It
us?
should give us
Local.
Yeah, it will give us local. Can you see that? Now, but you may specify that when dealing with something, now here I can say, okay, I want to use egg, but this egg, I want to use a global egg. It means you want to change the global variable. So here egg by global is what? Value, right?
value.
But now when I use this keyword global x, it means I am referring to the global x. Global, this keyword global, it is telling me global x. Now when I say x equals to spam, it means the global egg is now replaced with what? Spam.
Spam.
Oh, yes.
Now I return egg. So what do you think when I run this, what will happen?
Value.
It should give us
What will return?
because we replace it.
What when I run this function, what will it return?
Spam because we replace it with spam.
Can you see spam, right? Because as I said, this global
Yes.
X.
references your in a soon change of global variable. I'm using global
Yeah.
variable, not a local variable, right?
Yes.
Yes. So this is something that we should all know about when you are referring using functions. What is the scope of the function whatsoever? So these are 4 things we have seen now. The first one is global variable. Local scope cannot use variable. Oh, no. The first one we see is local variable cannot be used in the global scope. That is, now here I have a value called egg, right? I have a value called egg, then it cannot be used outside, right? And also we have seen that local scope cannot use variable in other scope. If I have a variable in this function, it cannot be used in this function, but they can have the same variable name, but their values are different, right? So what I mean here is that this egg 99, I cannot access it here. We also
Okay, doctor.
Yes.
Is there any way that you can declare, if you declare the variable globally, can you access it through these 2 functions?
Oh, okay. Yes. So Sana is asking, like, when I declare a variable globally, can I access it through this function? Yes. So this is the way. So I have egg equals what? X equals to 44, right? So for you to access it, this is just a simple, just what you need to say is global.
Oh yes, good.
Global egg.
Egg.
Can you see global egg? It means now this function spam has a variable global, right? So it means you are accessing a function globally. Even if you don't declare this one, you can use any variable. I can use x. I can say x plus x. You can see here inside the spam, I did not declare any variable to be x. But when inside it, I'm plusing variable x plus x. So what will happen is that when you run this, Python will check local. Is there any egg? If there is no egg, it will now go and use the global value. Yes, it will go and do the global value. So when I click this one here, this. Okay, oh, we didn't call it. So we can call the function called spam, right? When we call the function, so you can see we have the value 88, right? Because we said egg 44 plus 44. So that is it. So global variable can be read from the local scope. So this is what we said. Here I have egg equals 42, and now I call it here, I can read it. So this is basically the issue of global and local scope. Now there are 4 rules to tell whether a variable is a local scope or global. If a variable is being used in the global scope, that is outside of it, then it is always a global variable, number 1. If it is declared, the variable is declared outside the function, then it is global variable. If there is a global statement for that variable in a function, it is global variable, right? What this means that if there is a global declaration like this, I say global X, then it means now X becomes what? Global. It will always be global. Even if I change the value, it means I change even the global value, I change it. Do you understand what I mean? Even if this,
Yes.
yeah, even so here, when I run this, let's assume it does not return anything. But here I change the value. Here you can see when I run this, the global variable its value is called value, right? It contains we assign value to it. But here I say global X. It means I'm referring that the X I'm using is global, but now I change its value. X, the global value now is what? What is the global value when I call it? So here, when I come here, I say X. The global value now will be no value.
Okay.
Because you now change the global value is value. This is its value. Now, when I say global X, it means now I'm dealing with the global variable.
Global, yeah.
Whatsoever I change its value, it means even the global variable has been changed. So here, can you see I say spam X is spam. It means I'm updating the global variable because X now is global. Yes. So that is if the variable is used in an assignment statement, in the function it is local. So if we have a variable that is used in assignment operation, so for example, I have this, I said X equals local. So you can see this is an assignment statement inside the function, then it is local. But if the variable is not used in the assignment statement, it is global. So if the variable is not being used in assignment, so these are some of the rules we can always consider. Any question before we continue? Any question? Okay, this is still our last chapter. Last part of us yesterday. Let's quickly finish it and go to chapter 9, which talks about classes. But before we go that, let's talk about something very important when you are dealing with functions. Functions should have descriptive names, and this name should use lowercase and underscore. So what they are telling us is that when you are actually creating a class, function, always use descriptive name. For example, here I can say def. I want to create the sum of numbers, for example, sum of numbers. So always use this. What this is telling us is that they should have descriptive names. So you can see sum of numbers. Can you see people will, basically this function is summing 2 numbers A and B, right? So the name should be descriptive, and this name should be use lowercase and underscore. So always your name, function name should use lowercase and use underscore. Can you see that? So what this is telling us is that this is the styling, how you can style your function. Don't come and just write sum of function. This is off-footing, right? So we always try to write our functions using small letters and also underscore. And now, yeah, immediately after your function, you can write this thing. What is this called? Simon, what is this line called?
Which one?
This one. Malam Amrja.
Docstring.
Malam Amrja.
Maybe but your meeting can't have any.
Okay. Simon, you are on a line.
Docstring.
Yeah, remember we always want to create add docstring in our function. because it's always explain what the function is doing. So if I have this function called sum of numbers, now somebody is using my function can come and say, okay, can try to find out what the function is doing. So you can see here we use doc. Doc always doctrine, right? Doctrine is something that explains what the function is using. So even if you
share comment ne ko kuma running din shi ake.
Comment ne amma for function amma da triple quote yake. Malama sana bike kalli lesson din jiya ba.
Na kalla.
An yi fa bayanin wannan a wajen ko kuma dai kin missing ina ji.
To ka san in kai missing abu ba komai zan capturing at the moment ba.
Haka ne. Yeah. So it's very important. Wannan ba lalle bane ba kamar comment ne. It's not necessary, but when you
for
write
readability and maybe if somebody is reusing the code.
Yawa.
For readability and understanding.
Yawa. So zai iya zama ma multiple line. Kin gane ba ma line dai ba. Kai ta rubuta turanci.
Okay. So for each line sai an yi amfani da wa'annan abubuwan ko kuma is from the beginning to the end.
Daga farko sa daga farko guda daya a ƙarshe sai ki sa guda daya shikenan.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, kin gani? So zaki ga wasu sun mai rubutu da yawa a nan.
Kenan ko da wani yare zan iya yi ko da Hausa zan iya rubuta?
Ko shin ma zaki rubuta ta jiya Hanna na dauko ta daga makaranta. Wai she was asking me wata ta wuce ta gefen mu ta tem Portuguese na ce mata Allah ban da wai ban iya Portuguese wai shi nake yi nace me shi to sai muka shiga bus sai na bude Google Translate sai ta faɗa sai in ga me yake nufi me take nufi sai wata yarinya tana jin don ta ce min wai kana so ka ji me take cewa wai irin kana faɗan abin da ba a ganewa shine shi irin kana bla bla din nan baka san me kake cewa wani ce ne yaran Portuguese so kowane language za mutane amma kin san yanzu kowa da turanci yake rubutawa so it's called doctrine. So that is it. So this is one. Number two, every function should have a comment that explains concisely what the function does. Kinga comment shini wannan comment. Yeah. This comment should appear immediately after the function definition and use docstring format. So kinga immediately, this is called function definition. Wannan kana faɗa def kana faɗa name of the function, the argument din shi kana faɗa sai ka rubuta docstring kuma zai iya kama zama multi-line. If you specify a default value for a parameter, no space should be used on either side of the equal sign. This also applies to keyword argument. So if you use specify a default value parameter, so what this is telling us is that if I use this, so this B is parameter, right? So if you want to assign value to parameter, don't remove space and say B equals to 3. Can you see that? If it is inside the parameter, just don't leave space like this. You can do A equals to 2. This is the format so that's what they are saying. This is the styling. If you spare a default value, you can see this is the default value in the function, right? Remember yesterday we discussed about default value. No space should be used in either side of the equal sign. This also applies to keyword argument. And also recommend the line of code should be 79. So what this is telling that when you are writing everything, you are writing code, the tsayin sa kai ya wuce 79. Can you see wani line akan a program anan dina line? Can you see wani line? So this is called the recommendation is kan na rubuta code ya wuce wannan line. Idan na zo code ina rubuta ya zo wannan line to kai in yi tab in danna underscore na da next line in ci gaba. So this is some kind of recommendation that the length of your line should not be more than 79 character. So if your program or module has more than one function, you can separate each by 2 blank lines to make it easier to see where. So when, for example, in my function, if your function is if your program or module has more than one function, okay. So what this is concerned about module. So what this means is that now can you see I have one function. So for example, if I have another function here, let me see. Sum of numbers. No, give me another multiplication of numbers, for example. Multiplication of numbers. So, for example, I have another function called multiplication of numbers. Can you see that it does it? So what they are saying is that if you have two functions, so leave two spaces like this. Always leave spaces between function to the next so that you can easily see what this function they are doing. But when you put them like, close to, so they are not, so that's what they mean here. So even if inside your module, remember we have a module called pizza, right? Our module called pizza, this is it. So when I have another function inside this module, so I should always leave two spaces. Can you see that? Like this and now this. So this is the styling that pattern. You can see this is better to read rather than like, for example, if you have this, the concatenated in the same, can you see that? So it's better to have like 2 line 1, 2. Can you see that? 1, 2. Can you see that it's easier to read and also debug 1? Can you see that? So that's what they mean by that statement. The last one is all import statements should be written at the beginning. So when you are doing programming or whatsoever, all your import statement should be begin at the beginning. So when I want to do something, what I can do always is always import numpy as np, import pandas as pd. Okay, whatsoever. Import. What this is telling us, import everything at the beginning, then you can come and start doing whatsoever you want. Import everything at the beginning of your program, then come and start. That is so that is the chapters about functions. Yeah. Then we can go to the next chapter, which is classes. Do we understand function? Or is there any questions?
Hello?
Yes.
Doctor, I've seen anonymous function. Have we explained it? Anonymous.
Okay, let me explain. Naga Wakada.
Okay.
Let me explain it. Anonymous. So we have another thing called anonymous. Okay. We have the last one called anonymous because even the book did not actually explain anonymous.
Okay,
So
anonymous.
So this is a normal function we know in Python, right? Add. What is the name of this function? What is the name of this function?
Multiplication. Is it multiplication or what?
I mean, what is the name of
X.
What is the name of this function?
Add.
Add.
X.
This is the name of the function.
Add.
Ai kina mota kina kan titi ne?
Ajiya ki ci gaba da tukin ki kawai.
Ba ni nake tuki ba, sista ta ce ta karba.
Har rediyo muke jiyowa ma ba ta
Shine har rediyo muke jiyowa shine.
Ba so na yi omission na kashe rediyo.
Okay. Our function name is called add. So right, this is normal function. This is how we define. Then we can when we create this function called add, then we can run the function. We can add, right?
Okay, this return x plus x now. Okay. X minus x.
I have only. Oh, it's return x plus x, right? It's using. It has only one argument. Addition is doing addition. Yeah. So this is normal function. So, but we have what is called anonymous function. Anonymous function is a function that we don't actually give it a name. So this function is called add. It's basically doing addition. But we can have what is called anonymous function. Anonymous, it means it does not have a function. So an example is called lambda. Lambda. So we can use lambda. Let me give an example. Lambda. Okay. So can say x equals to 2, and now I can say here lambda. So here I have something called lambda. Now here you can see this is a lambda, which is a keyword, and now this is something x, right? So given any x, find the summation of x. That is what this is doing. And this is a function, but it's called anonymous. We'll see many examples of it. Let me see. One of the good example of that is this. Let me give an example. For example, here, I say lambda x. Can you see x? And I have x times 2, right? X times 2. So given any x, find x times 2. But here we provide 12, which is the meaning of x. So here you can see it's 24. This is called a lambda function. We will explain more. The reason why I skip it is like it may look confusing.
Doctor, we can forget it.
Let me give another example. I will explain it more in. So here, for example, one good way is using lambda is anonymous function is if you want to filter something. So here, for example, I have a list from 1 to 9, right? Now I can use lambda function. I say lambda, which is secure, x modulo 2 equals to 0. That is if given, and what you can do is this. Given any list, return the modulo, which is even number. So a filter function is used to have 2 inputs. Now here is a function which is lambda, which calculates something that is even from the list and return it. So here when we run this one, it will give us anything that is what do we call it? That is even number. So
I think doctor is like.
Sorry?
Yeah, I think it accepts. It's like it accepts multiple inputs. Return single output.
No, you can even have a single input, single stuff. Can you see that you have a single number? Yeah, this is an example with the filter. So a lambda function, it does something here, given any value, return this. So here I say my value is 12. So just look at this example. Here it may be confusing. I will come to that.
Okay.
So a lambda function is written in this way. You say lambda. Yeah, this is the keyword. So this one here, for example, x times x, or x times 2 here. And now I can say, okay, the given x is 2. So what this means is that maybe 3. When I run this one, it gives me like 2x is 2. It will give like 2 times 3. Okay, right. So we'll come to lambda function. It may be a little bit confusing here, but that's why I skip it. I will discover it more later. So let's go to the next one, which is called classes, which are the most important part. Yeah, they are very important classes. So classes and OOP in Python. So any question before we continue? Simon, kana nan kuwa ko kana bacci? Eh? Sana fa tana nan, sana kina nan?
Ina nan, wallahi kamar da network issue yana dan breaking, amma dai ina nan ina ji.
Okay, so let's go to classes. This is very important, classes.
Okay.
OOP is one of the most effective approach to writing software, as we know, object-oriented, very thing to use. In object-oriented programming, you write classes that represent real-world things and situation, and you create object based on the classes. So what we mean by this is that when you in object-oriented, what you do is basically you write classes, and now you write object based on that classes. And the classes are the main Python object stuff. So let's look at how we can write class. So the way you can create class, so remember this is how we create function, right? Def, we can say add, right? And we can have this, right? And we can create a function with, a function with this, like this. Okay. No. Def, add, giving a value x. Yep. So this is a function, which is basically which kind of function it returns for me. I don't like this function. So yeah, so we all know that we write function with keyword. I'm so lazy that I always want it to predict what I want to write.
Yeah, ake naka yake prediction din.
Yeah, I have something. Oh, my computer is. My computer is. Yeah, so I have something called GitHub Copilot, which is basically do prediction of code you want to write. So this is before my VS Code return to normal. Let me show you GitHub Copilot. So this is a GitHub Copilot. So now with GitHub Copilot, you can write something that determine whether the sentiment of text is positive or negative. It will automatically bring code from internet and write the code for you. You just write a comment. Can you see? Can you see? This is just a comment. Determine. You just write a comment, and now it will automatically go and now download the code that will do that for you. And this is deep learning. So this is a deep learning. It's prediction, right? You write something in English and it will predict. So it was trained on billions code on GitHub, more than just autocomplete. Can you see that? It's powered by a new AI system by OpenAI. Can you see the way it does? So yeah. Can you see it write code automatically? So that is why sometimes, can you see now test 3 software, it just take code for him. Test 2 is from user, can you see it automatically? So that's why sometimes now I just, so you can sign up here, sign up for the technical preview. When somebody sign up, they will now send you an email that you can use it so that it is the ESH IPS code. Yeah, so let's go back to Simon Kagani.
Na karatun nake tambayar ka tambaya one will do that.
Abin na yayi hooking, let me start it with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Mama da gidan biki ke tafi ne?
Me kace ma Shamsu?
Gidan biki ke tafi ne?
Wallahi ba gidan bikin ka zo ba. Da kasuwa muka shiga.
Okay, okay. Okay, so let's continue. Classes. We already know how to define class, right? So I mean function. This is where we define function, right? For example, if you want a function that basically, why my computer is okay? Let's wait.
Or start recording, starting.
Yeah.
Yeah, start take bukata.
Ama ganin screen ɗinka fa.
Okay.
Wannan dai muke gani mai technical preview din. Your
Oh.
AI pair programmer.
Oh, okay.
GitHub.
Okay.
Okay.
Kuna ganin da ko? Kuna ganin zu? Okay. So as I was saying, we already know how to write a function, right? We write def. Def is a keyword. Then we say name, add, for example, which is the name of the function. Then we put this semicolon. Then we put enter, right? When we put enter, then we can write anything we want our function to do, right? So the next thing we see here is something that is more than function. We already say that function allow you to make your programs more modular by not allowing everything to be in a single file, but taking your function maybe and puts it in modules, right? So that you can call it the function to do many stuff. But the more, something that is even more sophisticated than that is called a class. So how do you define a class? You use this, you say class, the keyword, the name of the class, right? And now you provide some stuff here. Now here, what you can see here, this person is the name of the class. And this is a docstring. Remember in a function we use docstring, right? Triple quote, right? So a class also has a docstring. So you can see here it's a person class. It means this is a class called person. Now, the next thing is we have method. So you can see anything that we use def is called a function, right? Add is a function. But when we use this def inside a class, it is called a method, not a function. So a method is a function in a class. Remember, this is how we define function using def keyword, right? And do the stuff. It's called function. But we have a class now. When you have a class and you use the def, and this is the name method, and you input some parameters and put something, then this is not a function, it's a method. So in another way, a method is a function in a class. So this is how we define a function, class, and now you provide this init double underscore. This is double underscore in your object. And now here, each class must have this init method. Remember this, each class, just take this one. Each class for now must have this init method. And now it must have this keyword self. Then anything must come after the self. So common class must have this one, at least one method with init. So each class must have at least one method, which is init method, which initialize the object, if we call it. So, and it must have this. So this is the name of the person. So here you, for you to assign the name of the person, you must call this self.name. So whatsoever here you have, self.name is equal to name. So whatsoever you put here, you will now assign it to what is called name. So let's look at it more critically. This is just an example. Let me show us how we can define a class. So from the example, you see, let's start by writing a simple class, dog. So when I say to a class for dog, that represent a dog. So this class for dog represent all dog in the world, for instance, or in your house. For instance, in your house, you have maybe 10 dogs. So let's create a class called a single class dog. And now we will have, now we know dogs, they do have names, right? So maybe dog A is equals to Charlie, dog B is equals to Tunde, dog 3 is equals to, you know, all their names. So we will have the names for them, and now we will have behaviors. So the name and age, which are basically some attribute of the class, because name and age is not something that action, it's just attribute. We'll see how it is done. And the other one, we have a dog can sit and roll over, right? So these are called verb, right? This can be part of method that the dog can do. So let's look at what we'll have now. Class dog. Remember, each class must start with capital. It's not must, right? Each instance from the dog class will store a name. And okay, here I will explain this. So this is the class name dog. What we do normally is that the class name should start with capital letter. So this is the dog name. Now I tell you that using capitalized by invention, convention in Python, right? So I told you that each class must have at least one method, which is init method. So here I said def init double underscore sub. You must have sub. Now this dog, it has some variable. What are the variables? So dog can have two variables. One is attribute. Attribute is something future for the dog, like it is name, it is age, it is color, you know, it is, you know, all these are features. No, not and it can act. What I mean, it can act. It means it can do some action. That's called method. So here, and age, which are somehow kind of called attribute of the class name and age. So you can see here also, because this is a method, it must have its own, what do you call this one?
String.
Dog string. And only name and age can be used to make instance. So here you can see I have name and age.
Excuse me, can't you use the height or the color there?
Yeah, anything. Let's change it.
So,
Anything you can do, right?
no, just leave it the way it is. Just leave it the way it is.
Yeah, this is just like attribute. So we use
Just leave it the way it is.
yeah. So now how can I assign now the name for the I have now name and I have age. So what you can do is say self dot name, then you give it this is a name. So self dot age is the age. So this means that these are called attributes. What are called what attributes? What you can actually, we can see in detail. Don't worry, we'll see what we mean by this in detail. Now, this is def init method, but we can have some action. We can have some action that the dog can do. Anything that the dog can do, maybe we can put in separate method. So here I call def sit. Can you see sit? Because a dog can sit and a dog can roll over. So you can see now I create two met functions, right? They are functions. Remember, this is how we create a function, right? But since they are inside a class, they are method. So here, each method must have self. Like this one must have this self, this one self. The reason why they must have this, when we create an object, it will be automatically instantiated with this method and the object. So here you can see I have the object, I have the method, but now you can see the object now here that we have them with self.name is equal to name, self.age. We can now access them inside this method. So here you can see print self.name, that is the object. Now self.name will be the name of the imputed. And also here I can use the age here, print self.name is equal to roll, and self.name is rolling over. So this means that this is a class. And we'll see what this means literally right now. The thing you need to know now is that this is how we use a keyword called class. And now we define a class, we use this like function, but we normally capitalize the first letter, but we must create a function, a method for the method. The first method must be init. Any class must have a single init. So this single init method is where we receive our input, our attribute for the class. But the first thing it must come, the first thing must be self. The many attributes you have. If you have 1 million attributes, then they will come after the first self. Then how can you assign these values to this? this is just what you need. You need to say self dot name equals to name. Self dot age equals to age. That is the age and name are now whatsoever you input here, right? Now, if you want to define some other stuff like action of the object, you can define them, which is here we have sit, here we have roll over. Now let's look at it. This is an example. If you read the book, so I copy this explanation. By convention, capitalized names refer to class in Python. So can you see capitalized names? Sometimes you need to capitalize. So somebody can say dog, something like that. There are no parameters. Also, there is no parameter. Remember, in function, when we are creating function, this is what we do. We have, when we are creating function, we said we add parentheses like this, right? So when you are creating class from scratch, you don't need that parentheses. So you can see it's just only dog. Here we have, right? There is no parentheses, but we will see something like that. We also write docstring for the class. So you see, when we create the class, we write it just docstring to explain what the class is doing, right? So what this class is, a simple attempt to model a dog. We want to model a dog. What dog is, it has a name and age. Where is it? And a dog can move, right? Can sit. That is, we model the sitting. And the dog can move, we model the moving. So any
All right,
function.
so, but then, excuse me, in this case, just like we did under the init method where we combine the name and the age attribute, can't we have a single function or a single method for the sitting and rollover?
Yeah, wow, good question, good question. But that actually defeats the purpose of function. A function carry out a single task.
Okay.
The reason why we create function is to actually allow us to achieve different tasks singly. If you put many things together, in fact, if you write a function and you see that the function is doing more than one task, divide it to do only one task. Yes. So see, yeah. So that's a good question. A function that is part of class is a method. Can you see what I said? A function that is part of class. Everything you learn about function applies to a method as well. The only practical difference for now is where we call a method. So everything that we define, we discuss about the function apply to method. But the only difference is how we call the method. You know, if we have a function, if I have a function called add, and what this function does is that it basically print maybe basically do print, it print maybe print only if I have X, and now it will print X only. So for example, if I have this function called def X, and the way we call this, how do you call this function? I mean, how do you call it?
Which function?
This function add, how do you call it?
Okay, you just say add and then you
Yes,
pass in an element.
Yes, we just say add. We just say add, exactly. So we just say add, and we pass the argument, right? For example,
Argument,
1.
yes.
So 1 is 1. When I run this, it gives me 1. So the only difference is that when you can see this is a function, right? So everything, but a class, when you have a function inside the class, everything is the same. The only is that we don't call it the same way we call a function. So we'll see what will happen. The self parameter is required in the method definition. Can you see that? The self parameter is required in the definition, and it must come first before the other parameters. Can you see that? It must come first before the other parameters. So what this means is that the self parameters, can you see the init? I have init and I have self. So self must come first before any other parameter can come. So that's what this means. The self parameter is required in the method, and it must come first before other. It must be included in the definition, because when Python calls this method later, the method will automatically. So it must be included in it must be included in the class. Every method call associated with that. Okay. All right. Okay. Any variable prefix with sub is available to every other class. So this is something that we should know. Every variable, can you see name? Self.name. If you prefix variable with this self, then it is accessible to any other class. It looks like it is global. So self.name, now we can access it here. Self.age, or whatsoever, we can access it here. So this is what it's telling you. When you read the book, you'll understand. Any variable prefix, can you see? Any variable prefix with self is available to every method in the class. And we'll also be able to access the variables through any instances. So let's look at more information. So now to recap, now we create a class called dog. And what the class does is attempt to model the object called dog. Now the first thing here, we said we create an init method, and the init method must have a self and now the object name and age. So those object and attribute must come after the self. Now, when I have this, I will assign it to name. When I have the age, I will assign it to age. So what this means that whatsoever you have here, you can have different variable. You can call it whatsoever you like. But yeah, so these are called attribute, and now these are method. So let's look at what we can do now. Making an instance from class. Now, how can I create an instance of a dog? Now, to create an instance of a dog, this is how to do it. What is the name of our class? Yes, I mean, what is the name of our class?
Dog.
Dog. So if I'm then we can say dog. Dog, can you see that? Dog, but the dog has how many parameters? Name and age, right?
Age.
And age. This one is not a parameter, but it must be there, remember? This is not a parameter, but it must be there. What I mean by it must be there, it will be used to instantiate the class, the object in the class. So this means that now, when I have this, I will say the name and the age. Can you see that? Because name is a string and age is a number. So here is a name, this is the age, which is 6. Now, when I run, then I have my dog. This means that now my dog is the object. My dog is an object. I create an object now. Okay, maybe I didn't run this one. So when I run this, so I create an object. What is the name of the object now? My dog. Can you see that? So this means that when you create an object, all this method, because they are action, you don't pass anything. You only pass the attribute. We only pass attribute when we create the object, which is these two attributes. Can you see that? I didn't pass anything here. Can you see I didn't pass anything here? But we can access it. So can we see this? So here to create an object, we call the class name and give the two parameters. So here Python will create an instance. Now here I have my dog, which is an object. So when I run this one like this, so you can see here, dog we know is a class, right? And now my dog is an instance or object of the class dog. Remember this. This means that now I create the object called my dog. This means that dog is a class and my dog is an instance or object of the class dog. This means that my dog will have every attribute of the class dog. Now, when I do this, I want to open it here, my dog, which is the class, which is the object I created. It will show me some information. Can you see? It will show me which class, the type. It means it will tell me the class, this instance, which this is an instance of what? Dog. It will tell me it is class, right? And here the dog string of the class will come out. And now here, init the dog string, initialize name and age. Init dog string. What this means is that the init method, can you see the init method, it will tell me it is just string. it will tell me it is the doctrine of the init. So initialize name and age attribute. So here you can see we initialize name and attribute. So here you see that when you have an object, you can use this thing, this question mark, and this question mark will tell you many things about your instance. So you can see the question mark now. One of the things it tells us which class my dog is of the class dog. And now what is the doctrine of that class is this, and what is the doctrine of the init method is this. So because I said anything in Python is object. So even when you have the init integer, int, let me see this, integer. Let me run this one, integer. Okay, no. Let me say int. Okay, let me say value, for example, value equals to 3. So you can see now here, value equals to 3. Therefore, 3 is an object. What kind of object is 3? Who can tell us? Can you see value? Therefore, value is an instance of class integer. Value is an object from which class integer. Can you see? It will tell me. That is why I told you everything in Python is object. So this means that value is also instance of built-in class integer, and the string format, string docstring. Can you see the string docstring and something like that, and other English related to it. So this is telling you that everything you create in Python is object. So here value is object. Is object of which class? Value is object of which class? Who can tell us? Daniel.
Ni ba ga yanzu na dawo bane wallahi fitar da ni yake to na ki tsaya.
Me kace?
Wallahi correcting nake ta yi batun da za ka kula.
So
Wallahi na to na ki tsaya ko na kawai sai in daina ji kawai sai kun tafi sai.
kana makaranta kuma?
Wallahi ina office ne. Sai dai in kun gama ne kullum.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that now here I create this is just I'm telling you example. Can you see I said value equals to 3, right? You can see 3 is an integer, right? So value is also object, instance of class integer. So that is why here I say, let me show you value. I use this. So here we tell you, can you see it's instance of class integer. So this means that because integer is class, a built-in class, that is why. So here we now create my class. I create an object called my dog, and now I input it. So let's move on. How can we assessing the attribute of the class? Remember, in the class I have some attributes, right? What are the attributes I have? I have attribute name and what?
And
Age.
And age.
So how can I assess the attribute? So the moment you create the class, the moment you create the class, I create the class, I create the object, my dog equals to, we said dog really, right? So I create this object, so my dog is now an instance. So now, if you want to assess any object from the class, from the my dog, what you need, we need to use dot notation. So when I say dot age, when I say dot age, this will assess the object attribute age. It will give me the value of the age, which is 6. So this is called dot notation. So look at two things. Number one, we create a class called what? Dog. Now we can instantiate or create an object from this class. The class now we have a dog called Welly. It is age is 6. Now we can use this format to create the object. Now we create the object. Now how can you access the attribute of the object using dot notation? So here I use this dot notation. I create this one.
Okay. So muka yi my dog dot name shi kuma sai ba mu Willy.
Yawa, say ba mu name din shi. Can you see that? So attribute variable that are accessible through instance like this are called attribute. So you can see variables that are accessible through instance. So this dog, my dog is called instance. My dog is called instance or object. Instance or object. So all the variables that you can access through this dot notation, they are called attribute. So here you can see here, my dog's name is, you can see my dog dot name. What is my dog? Object that you create from the class. Name is the attribute. So when we run this, they will give you something like this. Can you see that? If you don't understand, please, because this is very important. While like of understanding if you understand this like classes, then everything will be actually like, oh, this is how it is done. Everything we will be doing, yeah.
Okay.
So now we see how we can actually assess the attribute. So remember now here, we define the class. This is how we define the class, right? This is how we define the class. When we define the class, we actually impute 2 attributes, and this is how you assign the value of the attribute using self.attribute name. The thing that you assign it in this way. But we have other methods. Now what we see how we can, number one, we can instantiate the object or class of the object, and now we saw how we can access the attribute using dot notation. But how can we access the method of a class? That is what we'll see next. How do you access a method of a class? So for you to access a method of the class, this is how to do it. After we create an instance from the class doc, we can use dot notation to call any method defined in the doc. So what are the methods do we have? We have 2 methods. So you can use the object you created and you say dot name of the method. What is the first name of the method? It's called rollover. So when I call this one, it will output whatsoever inside the method rollover, Willy rollover. So let's go and look at the method. Can you see the method rollover? Can you see the name of the method rollover? Can you see it? Remember, this rollover and this method, they don't have any argument, but since they don't have any arguments, you must have at least self. Self is by default, they must have. So what they are doing, this method rollover, what this method rollover is doing is just printing what? Self.name, because you already have a variable, you already assign the name rollover. So the name now will be replaced with, instead of self.name. Self.name, what do we assign it is name, right? So it will be replaced. And what sit is doing, sit is also only printing. Self.name is now set. So for us to access so for you to access the method of an object, is just close the method. So you also, to access the method, you write this. Can you see it print whatsoever is under the method? So when you use dot notation, you indicate to Python that you want to either run a particular operation or to access a particular property. These are the 2 things, because you will always see this notation. When you see dot notation in Python, yeah, when you see dot notation in Python, it's doing 2 things. Number 1 is you are either running a particular operation. For example, this is the object, my dog. I run dot roll over, because this is rollover is operation on the object. So you are running over because you are actually running some operation on the object. So you can see it give me something. This is one thing, running operation, because this is a method, it's doing some stuff, right? Or you are assessing a particular property. Here I'm assessing particular, my dog dot name. I am assessing property called name. So you can see it is 2 things. When you are using dot operation in Python, 2 things. You are either assessing a property. If you are assessing a property, you just put the name of the property without using open bracket like this. only the name of the property. What is the name of the property name? But when you are assessing, you are acting method, function or operation, that is when you call the method. Can you see? Because you must put this one, because this is the, that is when you use dot notation, you indicate to Python that you want to either run a particular operation. Here I'm running a particular operation. What is the operation? Sit. Because method is operation, is action, right? Or you are assessing particular property. Yeah, so that is what it means by but gani ban sani ba ko an gane abin da yake nufi.
Yes, Mangani.
Okay. So this is something also we want to emphasize. In Python, almost everything you use is an object. Kunjiba. In Python, almost everything you use is an object, which can be integer, float. Let me give you an example. I gave you an example already. So when I say this one, A is equals to 4.2. So this means that A is what? Who can tell me? A is what?
Float.
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 Okay, A is float. 4.2. But A is object. Oh?
Yes, because we say everything is
A is object. Object of which class?
float.
Float, yes. A is object of class float. So if you say A, if I use A here, I run it. Can you see it? Give me which class it is? Type float. Can you see that? Just like my dog that we created that class, my dog. Is it my dog that we created? No, it's not my dog, right? Okay, my dog, Nadia. So when I run this, can you see it give me which class this object is? It's dog. So this means that, and you remember, when this my dog is an object, this is how we say, my dog is an instance, it's an instance of the dog class. It's an instance of the dog class. My dog is an object that another is an object of the dog class. One abubuwan, remember them, they will be confusing. So it's very good with my dog is an instance of the class of the dog class. My dog is an object of the dog class. So here, if I have four, A is equals to this, right? A is equals to this, which is 4.2, right? So if I say, what is A? A is an object. Okay, A is object. Go back. It's an object of which class? Of class string. Can you see it? It's an object of class string. So that is what they mean here, that in Python, almost everything you use in an object. Integers, float, this or all of the Boolean are all special classes in Python, because there are two kind of functions. Yeah, so one kind of function text. So basically there are two kind of functions we want to talk in Python. One function, there are two kind of functions. One function, okay, this is the function. There are two kind of functions. And one function takes an argument by putting the argument inside the bracket. We already know this is a function. So add, this is just a function add, it takes the argument. So this is a normal function, but it only takes argument, by putting the stuff inside. So this is a function in Python, one function. So when we want to call this function, we just call the function name and put the argument. So this is the first function. So also, this is a function called greet user. And now when we run this function called greet user, we can actually call the function by calling the function, which is greet user, and now put the name. For example, Jessica, it is printing hello, username hello Jessica. So this is one normal function. Just look at it. How do we define this function? We say def keyword and use the name of the function. And now when we want to call the function, we put it the name and put the attribute inside. Can you see that? But we have another function. Another kind of function is one that is specific to a class or type. So the akwai function that is specific to class or type. An example of this. So let me give you an example. So you can see here I have a list which is A, right? But this function called append, this is a function append. This append is a specific to class list that can be used on the object list. Can you see? I said so. You can see this is a function. What this function is does. If we want to, this is a function add, and if I want to run this function, I want to call this function. I just call the function. I put the parameters. Among the also functions that you don't put the parameters like that. What they do is basically that another kind of is one that is specific to class type or class object. An example of class is list. The class list has function defined the work node. To use this function in strict list, or use the notation, for example. Okay, so I have a list here called A. Now I have a function called append. You can see here. I have a list here. Now, what this is telling is that we have some specific functions that are actually for particular class or object. So we know that this is a list, and there is a function that is used to update a list. That function is called append. So how can you update the list? So you call the list and you call the function like this using dot. You call the function like this, you can say append. Append, can you see that? And now put the what you want to append. What, for example, you want to append 5. So when I said append, I run this. So when I call A, now A will now, can you see before it 1, 2, 3, 4. Now A will now contain 5 items. Can you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? This, remember the two differences. All these two are functions, but one, we use it when we define a function like this, and now we call it like this and impute the word. It is parameters, right? We are not calling it on top of class, on top of any object, this function. Can you see that? We are not calling it on top of any object. But there is another kind of function that is a specific class or whatsoever. So you can see here, I cannot call this append. For example, here I have a class, I have a dictionary. Now dictionary has a function specific to it, which is called item. This item, we cannot call this item on a list. I cannot call item on a list. Let me see this. Can you see it give me an error? Because this function is not for lists. That is to a class or object. It's specific to that thing. So this means that this function is not to that. So the function that list can have is an example of them is append. So these are some of the things you should know. So now let's go back to our classes. Now we already know this is how we can create a class. So this means that when I create a class, I can create multiple classes. So you can see now I create another class called your dog, the first dog. So it means now I don't need to create very long code to create that. I can use this class to create differences. So here I have my dog. Now here I can do this one for my dog. So my dog.name here will be Willie. My dog.age will be 6. Now I call another one, your dog.name, because this is the object is called your dog. So when we print this one, when I run this one, okay, now I create this. What will, Simon, if we run this one, what will it give us?
Name of, okay, let's see, okay, Willie. My dog's name is Willie, and my dog is 6 years old.
Okay, So Malama Sana, what do you think this will give us, this one? Malama Sadafa, what do you think this will give us?
The first one, your dog name is, what is her name?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it will assign the name. Then the
Okay.
second one, your dog age will also
Okay.
assign the age, which is
Okay. So we all get it. So that is how we create a name, create a variable. So let's see it. Try it yourself. This is an example from the book. Let's see an example. So here they say restaurant. Make a class called restaurant. Make a class called restaurant. So see, make a class. Can you see class? Restaurant. I put this. The init method for restaurant should store two attributes. Can you see? We know attribute, something that you put after the step. Go back about. The init method for restaurant should store two attributes: a restaurant name and a cuisine type. A restaurant name and cuisine type. So okay, I say okay, Dave, this is the init method. Self is must. You must put this self, restaurant name, cuisine type. Then I say self. The restaurant name is restaurant name. Self the cuisine type is cuisine type. Mungana nang kwa?
Yeah.
Malama Sana, kin gane? Malama Murja, kin gane? Okay, so make a method called describe restaurant that brings these two pieces of information. So, and a method open this restaurant that brings a method in it. So make a method called describe restaurant that brings these two information. So what's in the method that describes these two information that the restaurant name and this. So this is the method def describe restaurant. That is the name of the method they asked us to do. But remember, we must put self, right? Then print the restaurant name is. Then I can access the name of the restaurant, restaurant and is cuisine type, cuisine subject cuisine type. That is what they said. Make a method called describe restaurant that brings these two information, only to bring these two information. And a method, I can what a method called open restaurant that brings message indicating that the restaurant is open. So another method that indicate that the restaurant is open. Can you see we can say def, name of the method, and sub, and now we print the restaurant is open. So this is what they asked us. Print the two attributes. Okay, do we understand this, how we create this one? Any question regarding this? Adia, any question regarding this?
No, doctor.
Okay, so let's run this one. Malama Sana Murja, any question regarding this? Okay, banda ma Murja ita tana kasuwa. Malama Sana.
Wallahi network ina ne ya tafi sai yanzu na da ku yi hakuri.
Okay.
Your network din biyu ke yana da problem.
Wallahi kuma saboda haka
ko?
ka shigo.
Wallahi.
Sai dai kawai ya fitar da kai.
Wallahi ni ma haka yake ta mun fa. Ai kawai sai hakuri.
Mai Allah si Oscar kaga shi da Hajiya da Doctor su ba sa samun matsalar network kaga ya tabbatar ba a Najeriya suke ba.
A Najeriya suke ba Hajiya.
Malama Sana ku sayi rauta.
To.
Ya fi sauki. Akwai wanda suka tafi daga nan gaskiya suna amfani da shi ne har video call muna da su wallahi ba matsala. Shi za ku daure ku siya.
Abin nan din ne.
Na ga ba ta fice 18K ko router na Airtel wani.
Last time dai da na ganta ina jin wuraren haka ne amma kamar lokacin suna promo.
Na?
Kamar suna promo ne lokacin.
Okay. Wani wacce muka yi magana gaskiya ta ce mu ta siya 24,000.
Na?
24,000 ta siya ta tafi da 24.
Yawwa shine in ce lokacin kamar price din da Hajiya.
24 ta siya gaskiya.
Okay.
Nan ta muna tare da ita. Ta je gida.
Okay.
Amma ban san wani type bane ba. Sai dai ko in kuna bukata zan iya tambayan ta. Me ne sai in muku forwarding gaskiya. Amma ta ce ba problem.
Okay, tana samun efficient.
It's efficient gaskiya, yes.
Ku bari ma dai to insha Allah zan zo in sa muku
Kafin ka je doctor fa zama za su yi.
Zan sa muku satellite.
Kaga in ka zo ka saka mana abin din ma intercom din ma da ka tafi ka bari ta lalace bare kuma
Ina intercom
ta faculty.
Ina intercom din faculty. Ta dai nayi?
Ta daina yi.
Tun yaushe.
Okay, so the next one example restaurant. Make a class called restaurant. So say class class restaurant. The init method for restaurant should store two attributes. So the init method for the restaurant. Remember we said every class must have init method. Def init. This is double underscore. It's called Donda method. A restaurant name and a cuisine type. So you can see here, I say, okay, this is the init restaurant name and those cuisine type. And this step is necessary. Now I assign this value was whoever has input this restaurant name, I will assign it here. Whoever assign cuisine name, I assign it here. Now they said, make a method called describe restaurant. So Sketchy making a method called describe restaurant. So I say, okay, def describe restaurant, I have saved. That print these two information. When it print these two information, restaurant name and cuisine name. Okay, I say, okay, print the restaurant name is self restaurant name and is cuisine type. And also that print is indicating the restaurant. Okay, and also a method called open restaurant that print a message indicating that the restaurant is open. They ask also to create another method called open restaurant that indicate that the restaurant is open. Can you see the open restaurant and now the restaurant is open? So when I run this one, I run the method. Can I have a question, Rostana? Okay, so we make make an instance called restaurant from your class. Make an instance called what? Restaurant from your class. So they want us to make an instance. So you can see restaurant is an instance. Can you see restaurant? The first thing is the name of the restaurant and now the cuisine type. So this thing is this. So that is the instance. So you can see make an instance called restaurant from a class. Print these two attributes individually and then call bold method. Print the two attributes individually. So how can I print each of the attributes? Remember, for us to remove, if we create this object called restaurant, now for us to create, access any attribute, we said restaurant, right? Restaurant. Then we said what? Dot. The attribute. What is the attribute?
Attribute of course. Restaurant name. The cuisine type. Restaurant name and cuisine.
Restaurant name like this?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at this. What this restaurant name?
So I show no cousin cousin. Kai ka bari a gyara mana yadda ake pronounce.
Ni na masa abin da ake nufi shi cruise wani kake
ba cruise ba cousin yake ko cousin ko
wallahi ban sani ba to
Actually,
ni da
wannan
hausa faɗa cuisine ko ban sani ba
Allah ka wasu su mana pronounce su sun iya wallahi.
Ka
bari su pronounce sun iya. Hajiya bismillah dan Allah yake cewa abin nan. Ba sai mutum ya googlen ba.
Hajiya wai ake pronounce din wannan?
Oh, wai dai Hajiya ana ɗauka ai malama sana yake wa magana.
Me ake ce mishi?
Abin da nake gani wai ba shi.
Kai ke masa kaji mu pronounce muka
shi kenan kan ba shi ne wato ya afta ba doctor. Dr. Sami na kyale pronunciation.
Ai wallahi Hajiya saboda gaba. Ka zo ka bincika.
Dai abin da naga cuisine type.
Okay, cuisine ne ko?
Cuisine type.
Ka ji kai ka zo kana wani cuisine
a restaurant ni ya ba san ma
cuisine.
Me ake nufi da turanci a Hausa?
Na ta mi kyale wanda bata kuma abin da yake cikin aiki.
Wallahi.
Fata daga ba kamar haka ba malam Sabino.
Mu tafi kai da Allah ka taba zuwa ma restaurant ne kai in banda zuwa Coke Village ka je ka ci wake da jika ba ai ba za ka je ba da restaurant da akwai cuisine type din ba ni ban ma san me. So let's go on. So you can see here now we create an object called restaurant and now we want to access the object which is restaurant name using this. Can you see that? And now also we can access the other object. What is the other object? The other object is cuisine type. Okay, Simon, do not change the cuisine type.
Oh, sure.
Cuisine type, cuisine type. So you can see here when we access it, so it can give us the cuisine type, which is the name is this. Can you see that? So that is what they ask us to do. They also print the two attributes and then call both methods. So now how can we call both the method? How can we this object restaurant? How can it access describe restaurant, and how can it? Saminu, how can this object restaurant access this method?
Which okay, the one we created.
Yes.
And it's going to be the name dot, then the method.
Yes.
Name of the method.
Yes. So you can see describe restaurant. Can you see we have it right? Yeah. So this is how it is done. Yeah. So you can see them. This is our right. So try it yourself. This one. Make a class called user. I create a class user here. Create two attributes called first name and last name. Can you see? This is a docstring, def, init method, first name and last name. And then create several other attributes that are typically stored in a user profile. So here you can see first name, last name, right? Make a method called describe user that brings the summary of the user's information. Can you see the method describe? My name is this. Can you see self the first name, self the last name, and make another method called greet user that brings a personalized greeting to the user. Can you see greet user self? Print hello, first name, there's first name, the last name. So this is the method they want to create several instances representing the different users. So they said create an instances representing the several users. So I can create a first instance, first person, right? So the first person is an instance, right? And now I put the name, and now first name and the last name. Can you see that? So when I do this, I now create the first name and last name, right? And now I can access the method describe user, and also this, I can access it like this with dot. I can also access the next one, which is greet user, which is hello Musa. I don't know, Haji, do you have a question?
Say doctor.
Okay, so I think we can all stop here. I don't know. We can stop here maybe so that
Okay.
yeah, so that practice because there are a lot. This chapter is very important actually, because
So
when you miss this one, when you miss these classes, voila, you will not understand the abubuwa. Remember idan muka zo muna yin wannan abin nan din na Python din mu na Escala, ba kun ga muna yin wani haka ba, import something date, then you can say okay, when you import date, you can say okay, date one abu, you can say okay, date time. You can say you create an you said DA is an object, right? When we do the import, right? You always say that this is an object. And now we can take this one and start doing something. You remember that? So yeah, so it's very important to understand this chapter, classes and function. These two, classes and functions, you must understand them. If you don't understand them, they will be really confusing. If you understand them, the moment you start going further, everything will be like the backbone. So I think we can stop here, and you need to practice and read the chapter 9, function. And if you don't read function chapter, please read it. If you don't read the class chapter, read it, so we can complete this one, I think, by, yeah. Any question?
Okay, doctor. Inshallah.
Yeah, they are very important, as I said. Yeah. Any question? No question? Okay, so if there's no question, I will try to even put some practice for functions so that we will master function. I will practice so that we can see. Kuma in the saka saminu sai kai exercise din nan.